Got it. Well, and our final album, and the album this one's going to be compared to, is Human League, Dare. Um, Tell us a little bit about your initial thoughts there, Josh, and then I'll invert the form a little bit, and then I'll give a little
Yeah.
bit of biographical info.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed in this album actually, or underwhelmed, I should say. There's definitely something missing on this album for me. I found it hollow and antiseptic. We could say it could come back to that coldness again. There is the it is very synth dominant, and you basically have synths and drum machines, maybe keyboards as well, playing different sounds that or playing acting as different instruments. I mean, and the lead singer is a male lead singer. I don't know. You'll have to tell me his name. I didn't look it up, but um,
Philip Oakey is the lead. Yep.
yeah, and he pretty much sings as the sole vocalist on every track, with the exception of maybe a couple. The most well-known song that people will know, and was a big hit, was "Don't You Want Me," um, and you'll recognize that right away. I thought the songs, I thought I enjoyed the songs more when the female vocalist came in to sing dual harmonies on it. Those were the standout tracks for me. This kind of gets into this album gets into some of the negatives that we have with kind of the synth rock, I feel like.
So there's actually two female vocalists,
Oh,
just as an
okay.
FYI. Yeah, there's Suzanne Sully and Joanne Catherall. So,
Okay. So when
yep.
either one of them, I should say, then comes in to help um, add to the vocals, those I enjoyed more. I found kind of Philip singing from track to track, uh, kind of repetitive after a while, and the nature and structure of some of these songs is repetitive as well, just in terms of repeating many um, lyrics a lot, and the it's I don't know, Human League. This album sounds kind of very dance focused, like that you would play in a club and just let it spin, or and the it has kind of a it's lack comparing it to Eurythmics was so interesting, because they're just, the warmth is not there on this album for me, the way that the Eurythmics album had. And there is not a lot of variety. I found that the songs kind of ran together after a certain amount of time, and they're all very synth based, as I said. And um, there was just something missing on this album for me. So I kind of give it like a thumbs in the middle. I thought it was rather average, and kind of highlighted what we didn't like about some of that synth based rock, and even in terms of comparison, like New Order or some of those other bands, that would kind of be the closest, and I feel like New Order is even kind of superior to this album in a lot of ways.
Interesting. I was a lot higher on this album than
Oh,
you were.
okay.
I wouldn't say that I liked it as much as the Eurythmics Touch album, so to give away a little bit, but
Yeah.
it's certainly not as full a sound. It's a stripped down synth sound.
Hmm.
I liked it more. You said New Order, and we've had kind of an interesting thing. You and Matt love New Order, and I have just been kind of left cold by them a
Yeah.
little bit. I do like this better than I like New Order,
Interesting. Okay.
quite a bit. Yeah, there's something about some things this reminds me of before I talk about it on its own, right? This reminds me, the first track reminds me of early hip hop. It sounds almost like the synth version of like sort of a DJ.
Hmm.
And you could absolutely hear someone emceeing over parts of the things that dreams are made of. It sounds
Yeah.
like kind of like Curtis Blow or like Sugar Hill Gang, right? We're like rapping over just with another added synthesizer part.
Yeah.
And if you took out the lead singer, right, and you just put an MC over it, it could
Yep.
absolutely be an early hip hop beat. So that was the thing that jumped out to me right off the bat. I was drawn to the bass lines on this album, and I've mentioned that a lot of times the bass lines leave me very flat on what you and Matt have often called the danceable songs because
Yeah.
it's more guitar parts and the synth. But I think what did help me on this is I found underpinning most of these songs was a somewhat groovy, albeit simplistic, but bass line that kind of got me to like move it. I'll give you a good example. Track number 4, Darkness,
Okay.
um, had like this really groovy, heavy bass. So there's like a synth part that's real high, and then there's a groovy bass under it, and then there's the singer who kind of goes with more of, I don't know how you describe his I wouldn't say monotone, but it's kind of the same very British,
Yeah.
you know, up and down, like, I hear you calling, you know, it's exactly if you've heard Don't You Want Me. Like, he sounds on all the tracks like he sounds on Don't You Want Me. He's got one, he's got a fastball. And then when they call for pitch number 2, he throws the fastball again. And then when
Yeah.
they ask what his third pitch is, there's the fastball.
It's
So
very
I
like
think,
regulated or modulated or something.
yeah. And while I enjoyed the female singers, I think I enjoyed them as just a change of pace from him. So
Yeah.
more as opposed to just really them adding this unique thing like Annie Lennox did, right, for the Eurythmics, where
Yep.
she's all over the place. I think it just was variety more than anything. But with that being said, I kind of like the space on these albums. It had just the amount of repetition which didn't drive me crazy. In this case, the repetition is largely driven by the synth parts, but it's not the same over and over again. There's different parts that repeat themselves in the different songs, and the songs do different things on repetition. It's probably his voice, which is the thing that has the most repetitive qualities, but
Yeah.
it's really those bass lines underneath it that give an element of groove to me, that causes me to not get lost on the album.
Okay.
Yeah, like another good example, Josh, is like I'm surprised like Do or Die has some of the elements of like a New Order song that I think you guys like, and I could absolutely see people dancing to that track. In this case, they sound, because these guys were the first big breakthrough synth act in America.
Okay.
That's how to understand them, right? Like they're the first. When you think of like British synth rock in the '80s, right? Much like we talked about Destroyer, it on its own, right, sounding like derivative, but until you realize, well, no, it's not derivative because they were the first to do it, right? Like this
Yeah.
is kind of like the group that broke in America. Like, and then there was like they were like, ooh, this synth rock sound is really appealing, and it kind of led to the ones that got huge, right? Like the Eurythmics, but also like Depeche Mode and New Order and all these different people. So I did think there were elements of Joy Division in this, as well. I thought there were elements of like art rock as well, because a lot of the songs like are talking about things like fashion and stuff like that, and like society
Okay. Hmm.
and things like that. So that was another uh element that I think there was a detachment, but it worked for me in
Like
the
to
context.
you see a comparison between like this and Depeche Mode too? I mean, they're always kind of
Early
like,
Depeche Mode.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, later they get a fuller sound,
Yeah.
and that way they kind of overlap a little bit with New Order. But here, yeah, it's like more proto, to use a term we probably overuse a little bit, but the simplicity here was a plus for me. It was a lot of synth and bass would be what I would call this, and so from that end of things, it appealed to me. So I would give this somewhere between slight thumbs up and thumbs up. So what would be between slight thumbs up and moderate thumbs up,
Yeah. Yeah.
solid thumbs up?
Yeah, solid thumbs up would be.
Yeah, I'd give this a solid thumbs up. It got a little long, but then they throw "Don't You Want Me" at the end of it. That's a really great song, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It works for me, not just because it's the hit, but it works for me as a synth rock song in general. There's a reason that that's their big song.
Right.
It's just a really well constructed song. So, but
I
yeah,
didn't.
what
Yeah.
his voice I could see wearing people down because it is a one trick pony.
Yeah, and I don't. There's nothing that really even comes close to Don't You Want Me on this album, which is kind of disappointing. I was hoping for maybe another, hit that I wasn't aware of, or something that stood out. And the bass for me, I really kind of didn't pick up on that. It just felt like they were using like using a bass on a keyboard, not even like playing
Well,
guitar. It just kind of sounded not.
I should mention
out.
it's the bass sound
Yeah.
on a synthesizer. It's not always. I think every once in a while it's somebody playing a bass, but like
Yeah.
it's mostly the bass sound on a synthesizer. So
Yeah.
when I'm mentioning this bass, it's the bass sound and then the electric sound contrasting itself with each other. So I probably should have said that earlier. So if you got this far in the thing and you're like, what is he talking about? There's no bass on this. What I'm talking about is the bass sound. So
Yep.
maybe you can edit, early. Like John's
Sure.
talking about the bass so that people don't lose their mind for like 12 minutes before they get to this part. But yes, I'm saying like the bass feel in the context of the song. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, this doesn't really rise above some of that other those other types of similar albums in the genre to me.
Now I will say I don't love Get Carter, that 1 minute and 2 second thing
Yeah.
where they're just like bird whistles for like a minute and two. It just it doesn't do much.
That seemed
of anything for me.
superfluous and unnecessary.
It did, and it comes at a weird part in the album where you're still trying to figure out. For me, it was like, can they keep their momentum, or are they starting to lose it? And then they did that, and then I Am the Law, which is this really dirgy song. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna like the second half of this. But then I was back on board with Seconds, and then I'm actually surprised you didn't like Love Action.
I actually did. I was just looking at my
Okay.
notes. I said this
Yeah.
is the second best song on this album.
Yeah, I mean, because it's very much in the lane of what you and Matt like, and
Yeah.
less so in the lane I like, but it's a better version of the type of stuff I like. But I'm like, yeah, that's really surprising because that shares a lot of similarities with the New Order song. So
Yep.
yeah,
No, you're right. I'm maybe backtracking a little bit. That one that kind of gets to the maybe, I don't know, New Romantics, Duran Duran type of sound too.
Yes.
That
Mm-hmm.
but yeah. So yeah, that song would be a second track that I recommend.
And I actually think Matt will like this one more than you because I think he'll be able to make the connection to exactly what you just mentioned, which is he likes Duran Duran a lot.
Yeah.
And there's elements of this that Duran Duran does this, but just adds a little bit more pomp and circumstance, I'd say, to it. But the skeleton of the sound is this, just with Simon Le Bon singing over it instead of a monotonous guy singing over it. So you wonder if like Simon Le Bon singing over this, would you like it more?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe so. Yeah.